The first 100 days. President-elect Donald Trump outlines his priorities as he prepares to move into the White House. Tennessee tragedy. A school bus driver faces charges after a deadly crash in Chattanooga. The end times. The focus of Pope Francis's homily and the unique diary the Holy Father keeps. And going digital. The new smartphone app to help you find times and places for Mass and confession. Those stories and more on EWTN News Nightly for Tuesday, November 22nd, 2016.
My agenda will be based on a simple core principle: putting America first.
Donald Trump previews an aggressive action plan for his first 100 days as president. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Brian Patrick. The president-elect backs off his promise to appoint a special prosecutor to investigate Hillary Clinton. Jason Calvi reports from the White House tonight. Jason?
Brian, a top Trump advisor says the president-elect wants no further investigations of Hillary Clinton. This comes after months of him calling her Crooked Hillary. At one debate, he even said if he was president, she'd be in jail. In an interview today with the New York Times, President-elect Donald Trump says pursuing an investigation against Hillary Clinton would divide the nation. Former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani, who could be the next Secretary of State, agrees.
There's a tradition in American politics that after you win an election, you sort of put things behind you.
Today, Trump says he's seriously considering Dr. Ben Carson as the head of Housing and Urban Development. As the president-elect continues to mull over his cabinet picks, in this video, he's promising to back out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. That's a trade deal between 12 nations aimed at slashing tariffs and boosting business.
A potential disaster for our country. Instead, we will negotiate fair bilateral trade deals that bring jobs and industry back onto American shores.
On day one, Trump also promises to cut regulations.
I will formulate a rule which says that for every one new regulation, 2 old regulations must be eliminated. So important.
The Obama administration, on its way out, is still pushing for the TPP trade deal.
And it's tragic to see that be rolled back, to see that policy that could address some of those concerns be rolled back by the person who claims that they share those concerns.
And Obama's legacy could also be rolled back with Obamacare and the Paris climate deal now in jeopardy under President-elect Trump. And President-elect Trump today condemns and disavows white nationalists. Brian, this comes after weekend video showing people celebrating Donald Trump's victory and at the same time giving the Nazi salute.
Jason, I'm wondering how people are reacting to Trump suggesting no new investigations of Hillary Clinton.
Well, one conservative group, Judicial Watch, is very critical. They say if Trump appointees do not carry out new investigations, it would be betraying Donald Trump's promises.
Jason Calvi at the White House. Thank you, Jason. And President Obama commutes or reduces the sentences of 79 inmates. Each was linked in some way to drug crimes involving crack cocaine, marijuana, and methamphetamines, among others. Some of the prisoners will be required to enroll in residential drug treatment programs. Obama has now surpassed 1,000 commutations during his presidency. Other stories our EWTN News Nightly team is covering in today's world. A Tennessee school bus driver faces vehicular homicide charges after a deadly crash Monday in Chattanooga. The wreck killed 5 students, leaving the town in mourning. Wyatt Goolsby reports.
Brian, the Chattanooga police chief calls the crash every public safety professional's worst nightmare. He says the 4 girls and 1 boy killed in the crash were no older than 4th grade. Now police say they're working with federal investigators.
Police say 24-year-old Jonathan Walker was speeding along a narrow, winding road Monday afternoon. Witnesses say he hit a garbage bag, then a mailbox before crashing into a tree. The 35 children he was transporting were all from Woodmore Elementary School in Chattanooga. 5 students were killed, 12 are hospitalized, 6 in intensive care.
Jonathan Walker is being charged with 5 counts of vehicular homicide, reckless endangerment, and reckless driving.
Friends and family are devastated.
It touched my heart because it could have been my kids. And these are some babies that was trying to get home. And I couldn't imagine to drop my kids off on the bus stop and not see them again. And, it was hard for me to take my kids to school this morning.
The school is open today, but dozens of students are missing. Grief counselors are on site for students and staff. In the midst of the tragedy, the community is rallying. People are lining up for hours to donate blood. The crash raises concerns nationwide about school bus safety.
Everyone's grown up with seatbelts, and the standards on school buses date to the 1970s. Times have changed, and we need to update the standards for buses.
The National Transportation Safety Board is investigating the crash. Their goal, to figure out the cause and prevent tragedies like this from happening in the future.
Walker is in jail on a $107,000 bond. He's scheduled to appear in court next Tuesday. The next step is locating the bus's black box, which contains data about the vehicle that could give authorities a better picture of what led up to the crash. Brian?
Thank you, Wyatt Goolsby. At least 14 people were hurt as a strong 6.9 magnitude earthquake rattles northern Japan. This video shows large waves resulting from the early morning quake. A tsunami warning was issued, but it has since been lifted. This is the strongest quake to hit Japan since a devastating earthquake and tsunami 5 years ago. The State Department is warning Americans traveling to Europe to be on alert for potential terror threats. It says ISIS and other groups continue to plan attacks on the continent, especially around the holidays. U.S. citizens should be extra careful when visiting popular tourist sites. That travel alert remains in effect until February. A rare glimpse inside ISIS today. Cameras were allowed access to a prison in northern Iraq where 1,000 men accused of supporting the terrorist group are held. This ISIS fighter was caught on camera during an operation in Kirkuk and later captured. He says when the group took over his village, he was offered a salary to sign up. Now he says he wants nothing to do with ISIS.
I made a mistake. I don't know how to read or write. Everything I did was wrong.
Another prisoner said he originally thought non-Muslims should be killed. He now says, after hearing a story about how Muhammad treated his non-believing neighbor, he has changed his mind. A part of Nigeria overrun by Islamic militants faces a new threat. Boko Haram has been steadily losing its grip on the northeast of that country. What's left behind, though, could be even more catastrophic. Descending over a gutted school destroyed by ISIS-linked Boko Haram. This video, shot by UNICEF, is a first glimpse of an area once firmly under the terrorist control, now safe enough for a brief visit. It's here in Bangui that 21 of the kidnapped Chibok schoolgirls were recently released. After months of tense negotiations, it was a rare success. More than 2 years ago, the kidnapping of the 276 girls sparked a global outcry. On a far greater scale, here the forgotten victims of this brutal war remain. Tens of thousands have poured into Bangui to keep safe in what they call widows' houses where women and girls shelter.
As we were fleeing, Boko Haram stopped us. They beat my husband and took him away.
Later, Yangana, not her real name, found out that they'd killed her husband. She's left with their 18-month-old daughter. So many of the men have been killed.
I keep dreaming about my husband. Life is difficult without him. I can't get him out of my mind.
As the international military coalition squeezes Boko Haram out of territory, aid organizations are uncovering a crisis on an extraordinary scale. 7 million people need help, most of them children, throughout northeast Nigeria. Tens of thousands could die from malnutrition.
People could not cultivate in the last 2 years. Still, they don't have access to their cultivation areas, and there is no, all livelihoods have been lost. And that's where we see a high rate of malnutrition.
A man-made crisis that, in the months ahead, could develop into a full-blown famine. Voters made their voices heard, electing a pro-life Congress and president. One conservative writer says now is the time to seize on this unique opportunity to defend life. Melanie Israel, a research associate at the Heritage Foundation, is with us. What concrete action can President-elect Trump take right away?
Right away, he can work to unroll a lot of the actions that President Obama took unilaterally. So that means he's going to be able to have his administration enforce things like the Weldon Amendment that'll allow hospitals and churches and religious organizations to be able to have healthcare plans that aren't funding abortion services or sterilization services. He can reinstitute the Mexico City policy. That'll mean that we're not going to send money abroad to organizations that promote abortion in their family planning services.
Why would you say it's so important that he act quickly in this area of life?
Because it's life that we're talking about. I mean, what more do you need to be able to defend innocent life?
It starts there. So we'll have a Congress and an ally in the White House. What will these lawmakers be able to do now?
Well, every indication is that the first thing that they're going to do is tackle Obamacare, which, as you know, has some anti-life components to it. So the HHS contraception mandate, there is a backdoor funding for abortion services, and so Congress can be very, very aggressive to repeal Obamacare so that we can do away with that immediately as soon as they come back.
But it's not all about laws. It's about our society in a sense. How do you promote a culture of life in a society that doesn't see abortion as an evil, or at least part of the society?
It's so important that we promote a culture of life in our communities, with our friends, with our families, and really talk about it. I think abortion is a subject that people maybe don't want to confront. And so when we're in our communities, when we can volunteer our time at a crisis pregnancy center or offer help to a struggling mother or family, that's how we're promoting a culture of life and showing that we value the dignity of every human person.
It's so encouraging to see the young people who gather for the March for Life coming up in a couple months here in Washington, D.C. How important is it for a lasting pro-life movement moving ahead that young people are really engaged?
It's so critical just to keep the momentum going. I think that's something that we saw with the recent election. Life was a major issue. People were Googling that when they were deciding what candidates to support. It's an issue that really moves the needle. And so knowing that we've got the momentum on our side, we've got a pro-life Congress, we've got a pro-life president, there's a lot of work to do, but we can go forward confidently because we know that the majority of the American people are with us, and so we've got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, polls show that a majority of Americans say they are pro-life. I wonder if they some realize what that means to be pro-life.
I think for a lot of people, there's this realization that it's more than opposing abortion. Abortion is obviously a very big component, but it's not the end of it. Again, when we're able to offer support and resources and help to families who are struggling, that's another component of being pro-life.
Throughout all of life. Melanie Israel of the Heritage Foundation, it's so good to have you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, the Dow Jones Industrial Average jumps above the 19,000 mark for the first time ever today. The closing bell as the Dow closed up 67 points at 19,023, continuing its post-election record-setting rally. The Nasdaq climbs 17.5 points. The S&P 500 breaks new ground, peaking near 2203. Coming up, a star-studded White House ceremony features Robert De Niro, Tom Hanks, Bill Gates, and more. Plus, we'll focus on National Black Catholic History Month. Today, November 22nd, the Church remembers the Roman Virgin and martyr Saint Cecilia. She lived in the 3rd century and was known for singing the divine praises. She is the patroness of music. Thanks for joining us this evening. I'm Brian Patrick. Well, Good Friday will now be called Spring Holiday in Bloomington, Indiana. Mayor John Hamilton cites the city's diverse workforce, saying the change would, quote, better reflect cultural sensitivity in the workplace. Bloomington is home to Indiana University's main campus. Critics say renaming the city's Good Friday paid holiday in the name of inclusivity marginalizes Christians. Well, during November, the Diocese of Charleston recognizes the unique identity of Black Catholics. It celebrates their contribution to the shared history of the Catholic Church in South Carolina. Kathleen Merritt, Director of the Office of Ethnic Ministries for the Diocese of Charleston, joining us by Skype from Greenville. She wrote My Little Black Catholic History book. So, Kathleen, in what ways does your diocese celebrate Black Catholic history?
Well, we provide resources for the parishes and missions and churches and schools so that they can give the opportunity to the parishioners and those that they serve some resources to celebrate with, just basic knowledge of what that history is.
There's recent history there in Charleston. A little more than a year ago, members of a historic black church chose forgiveness after 9 of their parishioners were massacred in the church during Bible study. How might that set an example for racial healing in this country?
It would set a wonderful example for racial healing. What is happening now in America is the racial divide, and people are hurting. And for African Americans, we've been hurting for over 400 years and looking for some type of healing. When the people in Charleston, including the Catholic Church, I think there's a clip that we'll show you where we participated in praying and singing during that time. When we forgave Dylan for what he did, that was healing. Because when you carry in all of that hurt and pain, it festers. It can affect your health overall. It affects everything that you do. So the only way that you can keep yourself together and heal is to forgive. And that is so hard. But this is what Christ does, and that is our model. And once we can do that, it becomes easy.
Dylan Roof, of course, the suspect, is in court right now. I wonder, how do you reach younger Catholics trying to bridge that divide that there is sometimes among us?
We have dialogue with them, and they need to learn their history. You can't move forward or know where you're going if you don't know where you've been. So during National Black Catholic History Month, that's an excellent time for us to pass on that history to our young people. We give the book, my Little Black Catholic History book, away to anyone. It's free of charge, and we have a celebration each year. It's the Black Catholic Heritage Celebration, and it's in December this year. Each year, the book is available. We give it away to the youth. In addition to that, we also give them the new Black Catholic Bible. It's called the African American Youth Bible. It's a project done by the done by the National Black Catholic Congress, and it's published, and we make it available free of charge to all of our youth in the Diocese of Charleston.
Kathleen Merritt with the Diocese of Charleston, thank you so much for your good work. We appreciate you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And some big names come to the White House today, receiving the nation's highest civilian honor, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. 21 Americans were given the honor, including Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bill and Melinda Gates, architect Frank Gehry, Tom Hanks, Michael Jordan, Robert Redford, Diana Ross, and Bruce Springsteen.
This is America. And it's useful when you think about this incredible collection of people to realize that this is what makes us the greatest nation on earth.
Today's event marks the 9th time President Obama has awarded medals of freedom. He's held a White House ceremony to do this each November since 2013. Up next, the common theme for celebrations leading up to the 2019 World Youth Day in Panama, and a new app for your smartphone to help you get to Mass and confession. Say among the nations, the Lord reigns. He will judge the world with righteousness and the peoples with his truth. From today's responsorial psalm, Psalm 96. Thank you for joining us on this Tuesday evening. I'm Brian Patrick. Only a few days remain in the liturgical year, with Mass readings focusing on the end times. Pope Francis reflected on the time of our death in his homily at Mass this morning. We have Mary Shovlin with us from Rome tonight. Mary, as the liturgical year nears an end, what was the Pope's focus in his homily this morning?
Well, the Pope was inviting us all to reflect on the last moment of our lives when we pass away and we stand before God in judgment. He admitted this is something that we don't often like to think about, but he said we should, because it makes us reflect on how we're living our life now.
He also talked about a unique diary that he keeps. Tell us about it.
Well, this was an interesting revelation by the Holy Father this morning. Sometimes we get these during his homilies, a glimpse into his personal life. And he said, when a loved one of mine passes away, I write this down in a diary, almost like a calendar. And he said, and I flip to the date, for the next day, and I see a loved one who's passed away, and it keeps them in my mind, keeps them in my prayers, but it also reminds me how quickly that time is passing. And he said this should lead us all to think that, one day our life here on earth will end as well.
Helps us also to remember our loved ones, especially around this Thanksgiving time. What advice does Francis give us during this Thanksgiving week and these final days of the month of the Holy Souls?
That's a good point, Brian. This month where we do remember our loved ones who have passed away, and sometimes we do have to think about this during the liturgical years and in our lives. He wanted us to take away from his homily that if we're living a good and faithful life, as Christ said in the scriptures, well done, my good and faithful servant. If you stay faithful, I will give you the crown of life. If we're striving for that, he said, we don't even need to fear the judgment that is coming when we do go to our heavenly reward. If we keep that fresh in our minds, he said, we'll be good to go.
And as we begin a new liturgical year on Sunday, any signs of Advent there in Rome yet?
Well, you've asked on the appropriate day, Brian, because they've just started setting up the manger scene behind us in St. Peter's Square. This is just the scaffolding at this point. The Christmas tree is arriving this week. We'll see those images coming in the next couple of days, the large Christmas tree. So the bands are playing behind us. So a lot of preparation. You can already feel Christmas in the air here.
Mary Shovlin, our EWTN News Nightly producer from Rome. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Brian.
And the Holy Father chooses a Marian theme for the next 3 World Youth Days. The Vatican says these gatherings will also focus on the theological virtues, faith, hope, and charity. Next year's World Youth Day theme is from Luke chapter 1, verse 49. The Mighty One has done great things for me, and holy is his name, from Mary's Magnificat. In 2018, the theme is Do Not Be Afraid, Mary, for you have found favor with God, from Luke chapter 1, verse 30. And for the International World Youth Day in Panama in 2019, the theme is, I am the servant of the Lord. May it be done to me according to your word, from Luke 1, verse 38. There is a new app to help us locate the nearest Mass, confession, and adoration, locations and times. It was unveiled in Rome today by Scottish Archbishop Leo Cushley.
I was keen to help people rediscover the beauty of the sacrament of penance and reconciliation. And it seemed like a clever new way to get people to do something that is very good for them, very helpful for them.
A bagpiper joined the unveiling as the app was developed for the Archdiocese of Edinburgh and Glasgow. It's said to be the first in the world, the interactive GPS-powered Holy Mass and Confession Finder. It goes live early next year. Developers hope other dioceses will take advantage of this technology. A new inspirational movie opens in theaters next week, just as Advent begins.
You can call me CJ. We've been praying for you, and we don't even know your name.
I'm Matthew Payton.
Like the Christmas pageant, Peyton? This year, I'm going to be the big guy.
Gabriel. Okay.
Believe tells the story of the Payton family in an annual Christmas pageant the family organizes. When hardship falls on the town, the main character, Matthew Payton, played by Ryan O'Quinn, needs to make a decision, sell the family business or cancel the pageant. Payton meets a boy who believes in miracles. Clarence is played by Isaac Ryan Brown, who says this movie is important to his faith.
What really made this script stand out to me is that hardcore faith and belief in Christ that you don't really see in other types of scripts that you come across. It really spoke to me and my spiritual belief.
This is a film that you can take the entire family to. Another one of the reasons that I signed on to the project, I really wanted to be able to sit next to my 5-year-old son on one side of me and my grandmother on the other side of me.
Clarence, by the way, was the name of George Bailey's angel in the 1946 classic It's a Wonderful Life. Believe opens in select theaters nationwide December 2nd. For the EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Brian Patrick. Good night. God bless.